I hope. Why is it not letting me go live on the gram? Live on Instagram? It says it's streaming.
Okay, we're streaming.
That's what it says.
Dillingham Group is live now. I'm sharing it out to all the places on,
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out. So, how do I see if it's live? Not even sure. Because it wouldn't let me click. Normally, you have to click like a button that says "Go live" on Instagram, but it says that it says it's live. Let me look at my phone. Maybe it'd be easier to look at my phone and see. Okay. Profile picture. I clicked it and it didn't do it. So I don't know that we're live. Why are we not live?
Live where?
On Instagram.
Old Instagram. Instagram's been a little bit of
Yeah.
issue from the get-go. What's up with old Instagram? They made us switch our orientation, and then they're fighting and arguing with us. We're trying to accommodate them. What's the deal with them?
So, I copied the stream. Connect streaming software to go live. So it says it's streaming.
Chunk them.
It's not. It doesn't seem like it's view on Instagram.
We got people dropping off to Facebook though. We went from
What?
12 back down to 6, maybe because they're just hearing silence.
That'd be all right. It's not working. Instagram does not seem to be working, so I apologize for those. It for some reason, Ken, I don't understand it.
That's Instagram.
It won't. It pops up with this thing that says "Go live," a button. You should be able to just click the button, go live, but it's not. It doesn't seem to be working. So it's all good, man. It is what it is. It says it's streaming. The other places are all streaming. So I think we're
shared
we're
out.
good with that. You shared it out?
Sure, shared out, man. Yeah.
Oh man.
Instagram. We need to boycott Instagram until they
Doggone it.
until they rectify the situation.
Well, you know what I'm gonna do?
Uh-oh.
Well, no, not. I don't think so. I think I'm gonna leave. I was gonna change it back to our normal, like full screen view.
Yeah.
But that does affect reels.
Does it really?
Yeah, when we get some traction with some reels. So I think it's probably best to just leave it, right?
Yeah. Don't mess with success.
My God. Okay, so you shared to everybody.
Yeah, I'm sharing it to people that I don't even know who they are.
Is there anybody that I need to share it to?
I don't think so.
I covered it all. You just did it all?
Yeah, I've even shared to some tornado group.
My God.
Some tornado recovery.
They need to hear about it.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Oh, here's one. Here's a good one. Oh, this is a good one. UPCI Sages.
What?
Bro.
There's an actual
Oh,
group of UPCI sages.
that's it. I
I
just
didn't even
shared it
know
to
that. How do you become an official
him.
card-carrying member of the UPCI sages?
Mm, I don't know. I think you have to get it by the laying on of the hands of the presbytery.
Oh, man, that's awesome. That is awesome. Alright, I think we're good.
Mhm. What's Ken Bastarkey talking about here?
You
Oh,
know what he's giving us.
yeah, there it is.
There it is. We're getting a little snow today. You guys getting some snow?
No.
Come on. It'll be gone it'll be gone by hopefully this evening, but they're talking a little man, I had a little nasty drive on Sunday coming home from Canton. Whoo, Nelly, it was bad.
Was it really?
Oh, man.
On
It was
Sunday?
like it was, freezing rain. I'd rather drive
Ugh,
in just a blizzard than freezing rain.
man, that's so good. I had a spiritual conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking about, we were talking a little bit about how, um, this certain situation, and I said, so I was explaining to this person that when you have a spiritual conversation, it's not, you don't ever want to assume like that the reason a person isn't submitting to God is because they're rebellious.
Yeah.
And I said there was a woman who had a husband and they had over $500,000 in 401k. And one day he sat down and said, "We're broke." And she goes, "Well," she said, I know, our checking account and whatever, our savings is low, but at least we got our 401k." And he goes, "No, we don't have a 401k." And she said,
Oh,
what do you mean we don't have a 401k?" And he said, "I've secretly gambled it all away."
oofta,
And
as they would
so,
say in Minnesota.
yeah,
Oofta.
yeah. And so I said, so here's the deal. I said, I was using the example and I said, so I said, when you make an assumption and this person said to me, "Why do we do that? Like, we, why do we automatically push that the truth piece? Like, you should be trusting God. And if you're not trusting God, then you're rebelling against him. You're not submitted, whatever." And I said, but you see, in that situation, it doesn't really have anything to do with rebelling against God. It has to do with the fact that this wound caused fear, and it's a fear of being out of control. She wasn't in control. What happened? And I was giving an example, swinging it back around to being in an ice storm. I said to the person, I looked, and I said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, "If you're driving in an ice storm," I said, "would you rather be sitting in the passenger seat or would you rather be behind the wheel?" And he said, "Absolutely, I'd rather be driving." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because he said, because I don't want to just leave myself in the fate of the hands of another. If I'm going to go off into a ditch, I want to be driving."
Mhm.
And I said, and that's exactly why the woman wasn't able to trust God and submit to him fully. It wasn't that she was a rebel. It's just that she felt like she was more in control as long as she was driving.
My God. We're not even 3, 2, 1 yet, and he's dropping bombs. He was he took an ice storm driving story and turned it into a disciple. Ladies and gentlemen, that right there is how you do it. That's how you do it right there, spiritual conversation. I
That's
love
what
it.
it's about.
I love it.
Trying to just throw out a little bone to the people who come on early and
Yeah, absolutely. And they can help us out. Just I mean, hey, I want the peoples to know, Ken.
mhm.
My brother was on ready to rock and roll at 9:50 today.
Yeah,
You were early.
my first tune in was 9:43.
What?
Yes,
Look at
yes, yes. I was on Restream at 9:43. Put it down, mark it. It may never happen again before the trumpet blows.
so we're kinda just wasting a little time because we know people are gonna be like, "There's no way they're gonna be on before 10:15 and
Mm,
going." So
yeah.
you get the bonus material. So people help us out. I'm back from jury duty. I'll share a little little bit about my jury duty experience,
Oh boy.
which is glorious. But So being off, it always whenever our schedules messed up like that, it always just, kind of makes it tough. So hit the share button, people. Get the word out. Tell people what's going on, that we are live and ready to rock and roll. And I think we're good.
I'm
Are you
man,
ready? 10:14?
so ready.
So ready, beyond ready. Kim is Starkey. He did say, Ken, 30 degrees, high of 40 today and cloudy.
My.
Depending on where you're at. I think you're probably a little warmer than that today, aren't you?
Yeah, we're supposed to get up to 60.
Today?
No.
What? You are like, I think this week 50s or something, aren't you?
Yeah, we did get up to 60. It was like on Thursday,
Yeah.
but whatever.
Whatever. Hey, all I'm saying is every day we get closer to March with no snow on the ground, I'm good to go. So
Exactly.
it's all good. All right, you ready?
Let's do it, bud.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the third on this beautiful January morning. No snow outside, Ken. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful day.
man, it's so good. I feel like I need some. I feel like I need some infrared rays today.
Bro, I may have gotten some yesterday.
That's so good. There's certain things that allow you to face it's like the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run in it and are made safe.
Yeah.
God's created, I'm gonna get me I'm gonna see if I can get me some UV light bulbs for my deal right
I
here.
think you should.
See it? You see
I
the
think
light
you
shine?
should, bro. Yeah.
You know
My
that
God.
song? Who was it? Was it Merle Ewing that sang "See the bright light shine"? It's just about home time.
Come on now.
I better stop. We 3, 2, 1'd it.
We are live. That is gonna go out to the entire world.
Probably broke a copyright law.
Oh, man,
No,
they're
no, no.
gonna
I
shut us
quoted it.
down. Oh, they're gonna shut us down. They're gonna mark us for sure.
I promise that the AI algorithm monitor will not recognize that I was singing.
Like, that's definitely a made up song. He's making that up for sure, man.
I could see my father standing by the door. It's like, oh,
Woo,
now wait a
my
minute.
goodness.
Those are the dogs are howling.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. We're glad to be back. Had a week hiatus. I just wanted to throw in the word hiatus. We had a
Yes.
week hiatus because I got called for the second time. I think it's been within 2 years, the second time in 2 years I've been called to jury duty.
What?
Yeah.
You must be on the short list. Jury duty isn't quite a hiatus, though. That's a lowatus.
It is a lowatus for sure. So my last impression of jury duty, I did get called in.
Yeah.
And they asked me questions. This is a couple years ago. They asked me questions and whatever. And so my observation was the people that get called to jury duty are crazy people, single women, and ridiculously crazy people. They literally, like, if you would have picked the 10 craziest people on the panel to choose from, that's who ended up on the jury, which was bananas to me. Like, the answers they gave, I'm like, either A, they're trying to get out of it, or they're just bonkers. They're crazy. They got on there. So this time, Ken, okay? So this time, we got stuff to do. And I understand my duty and
But
responsibility.
you're like, I've
in
done
jury
my
duty.
civil duty recently.
Yes,
So
I showed up. I went through the process. So I go in the first day. I go in and go through the whole training, and we sit there and we sit there and we sit there with 1,000 people. And we just sit there, and then they come back and say, "Hey, just wanted to let you know the case, the defendant took a plea. You guys are good. You can go home." So basically, wasted about 3 hours on Monday. They said,
plea out early, bro. Like,
"Plea
right?
out early. What took you so long, dude? What are you doing?" So then you got to call back in on Monday night, right? So I'm thinking, man, I served my duty. I was there. Surely they won't call me back in. Nope. Sure enough, got to come back in on Tuesday morning. We sit there again, another, I don't know, 3 hours, maybe something like that. They come back in. Both cases this morning, plead out or pled out so you don't have to serve on jury duty. So I wasted about I don't know, 5, 6 hours Monday and Tuesday sitting there, and we didn't get to do our podcast because of plea deals. Can you believe that?
See? Oh, come on. Okay, so my question is, when they choose these crazy people,
Yeah.
does the defense attorney want it to be where it's like, man, if I can just get a rare nut in here, I can lock it up. And I
Can
mean,
lock it up.
is that what they're trying to do?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'll be honest, like, the case, kinda they present a little bit of the information. I kinda wanted to be on the case, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I never served on the jury, so I was like, "I kinda wanna do this." So I gave what I thought was a pretty good answer, and I don't know, they picked the craziest people. I mean, just bananas crazy.
All right.
So, anyway, that's why we apologize for missing. I hate when we can't do the podcast, bro,
For
you
real.
know? So, but we're back. We're back and ready to rock and roll today. We're early. We're ready to go, fired up. And we don't want to we could talk a little bit about Detroit Lions football, but we don't.
Oh man, poor Detroit fans. Poor Detroit
Long
fans.
suffering
Oh god,
Lions
it
fans.
literally felt like it literally felt like so many years, like watching that felt like so many years thinking to myself, this is it. This is the Cubs year.
This is it. Oh, bro,
It's
dude.
just I'm like, it was like the people that probably would console you best are Cubs fans right now, Detroit, because it literally looked like we're going to the Super Bowl 24-7, dominate the first half, and then all of a sudden 50-yard passes off the face mask of the defender into the hands of and it's like
Crazy.
you are destined to
It's
lose.
over. You know
And
it's a done deal,
and
bro.
then you start making dumb penalties and then mistakes and then fumbles, and it's like kick the stupid field goal and just God have
Kick a
mercy.
field goal, my
Ugh.
man. Unfortunately for Lions fans, their Bartman is their coach, Campbell. Like, dude, just kick one field goal. You gotta at least you just kick one, you got a tie game, and you go into
Yeah.
overtime and you got a chance.
Because didn't they have to go 90 something yards to score the touchdown? So it's
Yeah.
not like you're gonna be like, well, you can't say that they would actually score. Well, yeah, they marched 90 something yards.
They literally did it.
They were like from the 1 yard line.
They literally did it. It's unbelievable.
So
So we won't throw
no,
salt, proverbial
we
salt
won't
into
talk
the
about
wound.
any of that stuff.
We won't mention how stupid your coach is.
Oh.
Oh, gotta love it, dude. You gotta love it. Oh,
Yeah,
and let's be real. Can we just be real for a minute?
be
I
real.
don't think anybody on the planet outside of the 2 areas I wanna see if I can just defend everybody right out of the gate. Nobody wanted to see Kansas City versus the 49ers in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, I mean.
There was
Nobody
you
wanted to see that.
You could draw a circle the size of a dime on 2 spots of the map and find people who wanted that matchup. Take a dime and sit it on Kansas City and draw a circle. Take a dime on San Francisco, draw a circle, and those are the people who wanted to see that matchup.
That's it.
Everybody else,
That's exactly right, man. Of course, we could talk conspiracies and all this. There's a lot of stuff going on
I
about.
thought it was supposed to be Ravens 49ers.
Well,
Wasn't that
no,
the script?
see, they're working it so that Taylor Swift and, she can get her Joe Biden message out. That's
Did you see that
so crazy,
she's
dude.
personally created for the Chiefs and the NFL? There's something that came out and they calculated it was like $331 million worth of 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 franchise value through
Mm,
her association.
crazy, man.
Right.
Crazy.
But
But we
if she shed her blood today, it wouldn't save a single Chiefs fan.
oh, wow. You're probably gonna tell people that if you shout on the Super Bowl, you better shout on Sunday at church, bless God, right?
That's right. That's right. I don't care how much value your presence in a box at a game brings
Mm,
to the team.
mm.
I wanna know how much does your presence on a cross bring to the world.
Oh, man. And with that, I think we're ready to rock and roll
Yes, we are.
today. It's gonna
Yes,
be a
we are.
lively it's gonna be a lively
Thanks
show.
for being with us today, ladies and gentlemen.
Our job here is done. Oh, man. Oh, man. So, well, we do appreciate everybody being on and hit the share button, get the, word out for the live. Obviously, we appreciate those that are gonna be listening to the podcast later, but we appreciate those that show up. We want you to be a part of the conversation today, Ken, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it always makes it better. So get the word out. Tell people we are back and better than ever.
Mm.
Mm,
Well,
mm. Come on,
infrared
somebody.
me, Jesus. I'll tell you something crazy. I saw a podcast the other day, and
Yeah.
that they had across the bottom of the podcast, they had markers, and they were timestamps, and they were linked to various segments of the podcast. So if you watched, say, a certain amount of it, and you're like, man, how much what? And you have to scrub back and forth or whatever, that you could actually go to a certain. Oh, I heard that. So you go to the next part, and I thought, what we could do that, and we could say meaningless talk about this, sports talk, and then actual podcast. And we could just sort of set it up. And then people could be like, yeah, 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 yeah. They go to the podcast. And then there'll be some people. We have some that just would listen to the first half, and then they would go to the actual podcast and stop. And then we'd have some people be like, I don't care about all that stuff. And they go to the podcast. That'd be a nice gesture for our amazing audience.
It would, but we just don't want people to miss this solid gold information
We
and
want them to
entertainment.
we want them to fumble around with our podcast like we do.
Ex exactly right. That's exactly right.
If we've got to fumble around making it, you've got to fumble around
You
listening
gotta
to
go
it.
with us, man. You gotta go with us all the way for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's get rocking and rolling today, Ken.
Okay.
I am so today, I mean, I think we really got a really good topic, and I'm gonna let you set it up, but
Okay.
we wanna talk about bridging the credibility gap, and, you've got some information from one of my favorite kinda secular authors.
Yeah.
Man, I love me some Malcolm Gladwell.
He's so good.
He's got some great information. Talking to strangers is just so good. Um, Several others that are just, I mean, just top notch. So I'm gonna let you set this up,
Okay.
and we definitely want to hear. Uh, we definitely want people to engage in this conversation because I think
Mhm.
I think this topic about the credibility gap and why and understanding kind of the culture that we live in
Right.
and why what we're going to talk about today really I think is a massive reason of why we kind of started going down this road, Ken,
It really is.
and trying to figure out like how do we reach people who don't even maybe see a need for
Mhm.
God or have no God consciousness on a consistent basis, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you set that up,
Okay.
and then we can just dive in and talk about this, and people can jump in and be a part of this conversation.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we've talked a little bit on our podcast for a prior podcast. We've talked about the idea that we're kind of moving. Obviously, the United States is a large country, and there are a lot of regions in the country that have they're maybe in different places. I don't know if it's I'm not a sociologist, but it would be interesting maybe to even read an article or whatever about the amount of years of difference in the process of this. But there may be some places in the country that maybe in the deep south that are still that would still be considered a predominant Christian culture. There's so
Sure.
right now in America there are really three segments, and not just in America but really places of Europe and around the world. There are kind of three segments of culture. There are still some places, but it's a diminishing number of people in particularly the United States, and a much smaller a percentage of the culture in Europe that are what we would call a Christian culture.
Sure.
And Christian culture are people that obviously that's I guess probably pretty much self-explanatory, but the Christian culture are people that embrace the Christian principles. And then there's a and I think a diminishing number, particularly in Europe and even in the United States now, there's a decreasing number of people that are a post-Christian culture. Now,
Sure.
the the post
Absolutely.
the post-Christian culture would be what we would define that as the majority of people have a knowledge or memory of a Christian experience, whether that Christian experience is going to church with their grandparents. Maybe they don't go to church. Maybe they're not a member. They don't, whatever. They would probably consider themselves Christian, which
Yeah.
is why the numbers, when you see some of the Barna and Gallup numbers that show that 70, whatever, 3/4 of Americans or more would claim themselves to be Christians, but they don't, you know, a vast majority of those don't pray, they don't read the Bible, they don't have a church that they attend. They're just, if I were something, that's what I would be. And that's kind of that's the post-Christian concept.
Sure.
They have a knowledge and memory of it. But we're seeing a larger group of people that are becoming, and I don't like to use the word non-Christian. I like to think of it in terms of that they are the mission field, and so they're a Christian culture in waiting. So I say pre-Christian culture, which is a culture that really has no knowledge or memory of a Christian experience.
Yeah.
So that means that there's increasing numbers of people that you meet or that we will meet on a daily basis that need Jesus. Everybody needs Jesus, right? That either don't
Absolutely.
have that either don't have an intrinsic belief in the core gospel message, or they don't have an awareness of the core gospel message at all.
Mm,
I recently saw something, Chris, that
interesting.
was very, very interesting that said that there was a region up in the Northeast, and they did an on the street kind of thing. And they asked the question, um, have you ever read the Bible for yourself? And the numbers were startling, of like 30 and under. It
Yeah.
was way over 50% that said they'd never read the Bible.
Goodness gracious. Think
Never
about that. Think
had
about that.
never read the Bible.
Yeah.
So anyway, that sets up what we want to talk about today. And I think, I'll just throw it back to you for some comments and conjecture on what that does for us, how that changes maybe the way we should at least view who our target missional audience is.
No, I think it's really important. And like you said, there are places and there are pockets, right? So we're gonna make some broad generalizations. And one of the things we've talked about a lot is like we're not trend chasers, we're not statistics chasers because
Right.
those things kind of ebb and flow. And just like in anything with statistics, there are prognostications that are made or projections of what's going to happen, but there are a lot of things that can happen. So like for example, the numbers about Gen Z in particular
Right.
are super troubling
Right.
as far as faith is concerned and all that kind of stuff. Like
Right.
it's what, over 90% that
Right.
would consider themselves to have no religious affiliation or whatever. Like it's crazy high numbers. Now, having said that, it wouldn't take much to swing that. And so those numbers kind of ebb and flow. So I think it's important. Like we're not chasing trends and numbers and statistics and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's pretty clear that we're not living in a society that, the Leave It to Beaver era. There's not kind of like kind of an agreed upon value system. Like
Right.
you've got it what it feels like, Ken, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what it feels like is it seems like the people have been pushed out of the middle,
Uh-huh.
and you have people that live on polar ends of the spectrum,
Mhm.
right? You've
Yep.
got people on polar ends of the spectrum. So I think it's important to understand, like, you used to be able to engage in conversations with people, and there was, it may not agreement on everything, but there were kind of there was an agreement on basic fundamentals, basic values, some of that kind of stuff, and then you could take the conversation from there, right?
Right.
Basic right and wrong, like all that kind of stuff.
Right. Which
But
would
he
be the conversation with a post-Christian culture. They have a
correct.
Christian memory, so the conversation would be probably with them. So if a person was having problems in their life and they were a Christian culture, you would say, "Well, have you been praying about that? Have you been reading your Bible? Have you been?" In a post-Christian culture, you could even use the phrase, "You know what you need to do.
Yeah.
You need to find your church. You need to get in church. You need to, whatever." And they're like, "I know, I know." So what you're saying is that, and I like what you just said, by the way, Chris. I don't want to just interject and throw it back at you, but I like what you said. There's a difference between being statistic chasers,
Yeah.
but the numbers are the numbers, and the
Sure.
prognostications are about how they got there and what does that mean, and that by this time there won't be any believers left in the world, and blah blah
Yeah.
blah,
Yeah, yeah,
those
yeah,
kinds
yeah.
of things. But the reality is, if 90% of Gen Z say, "I have no church affiliation and never intend to,"
Yeah.
that's that doesn't mean that they're not open to the gospel. It just simply says you're going to be having a
Yes.
very different kind of conversation with them than you would even with millennials.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that awareness, okay, so just kinda give you an example. So, this weekend, had a young guy come up and he asked me if I played pickleball, right?
Yeah.
Pickleball.
Do I look like the age of people that play pickleball? Right? Is that what
This was a young guy.
what do you mean by that?
This was a young guy. I'm like, "Well, I have played, but I don't, like, don't play regularly." I said, "Are you a pickleball player?" And he's like, "Oh, absolutely." He's like, "I'm all in." Young guy, like, probably early 20s.
Yeah, young people play pickleball.
Man, he was fired up about it. So, but here's the thing. So we started talking about he started asking me questions about pickleball. And, like, he's like, "Hey," he's like, "What's your favorite paddle?" And I'm like, a pickleball paddle? Like, I don't know that there's I
Is there
don't
a difference? Like
I don't know. So he's like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you've gotta have, graphite something or other, blah, blah, blah. You gotta have this paddle, and you
and
gotta have
those
this,
and they're
and blah, blah."
stinking expensive, by the way.
They pulled him up. It was crazy
Well,
expensive. Like, okay, so here's the deal. God's honest truth, bro. I've maybe thought about pickleball maybe for, like, 4 seconds in the last 6 months.
wow.
Never thought about it.
Right.
Never never even had it's not on my radar. Again, I'm not anti pickleball. It's just not something that I'm really kinda into, whatever. So I give it no thought, 0 thought,
Right,
right?
and by the way, as Christians sometimes do, all of the people who love pickleball are gonna come at you right now like, "You're stupid for not loving pickleball."
100%. They're fanatics, bro. We know pickleball people are nuts. They're crazy. So they're gonna
So now we sound like the non-Christians. We're secular non-Christians. We're non-pickleballers,
we are
right?
sticking
Right,
pickleballers.
right. You sound like
Dadgummit.
Bill Gates right now.
Oh, man, that was low, bro. You didn't need to go there. That was hurtful.
Well, I mean,
That's so
I'm saying
hurtful.
to the pickleball
Yeah,
lovers.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yes,
got
yeah,
you. I
yeah,
got
yeah,
you.
yeah.
But to your point and kind of what we're talking about here today is this person it's something he's very passionate about, something that he loves. As a matter of fact, he's gonna go and be he's gonna try out for like the not pro level, but something along those lines and
Wow.
whatever. Like, I mean, like he's super into it, right? And he starts engaging me in a conversation, a 10-minute conversation, like I had this deep knowledge of pickleball. Bro, God's honest. 0 idea what he's talking about.
Yeah,
None. Our media guy here at the church, John Shellhart, who is the very best of the very best when it comes to media stuff, he'll sit down and he'll start talking to me about media stuff. And I've told him, like, bro, look, just know I'll nod, I'll smile. I'll be like, dude, that's amazing. That's awesome.
right.
I understand about 3
Just
words
don't ask me for input.
of everything that you just said. I don't
Yeah,
have a clue what you're talking about,
yeah,
right?
right.
And
Listen,
and
I'll agree with you until you tell me the price tag, and then I'll start shaking my head
That's
the other way.
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly right. We're building up to that. Your
Yeah,
fancy terms don't
yeah.
move me on the
Shake
price.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And how much is that?
Right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
So that's I mean, that's a kind of just a real life example. Okay, so when you have not a post-Christian, but a non-Christian
Yes.
culture,
Yes.
people are not for us, we're thinking about church. We had great services on Sunday. Worship was amazing.
Right.
You felt the presence of God, the word of God, experiences with him. We think about that. But when you go up, start engaging somebody, the reality is they've thought about it as much as I've thought about pickleball.
It's a great point.
God has no bearing on how they live, how they think, how they feel. It's not even on their radar. And so that makes it a challenge, Ken, particularly how we've traditionally approached people
Mhm.
because we've lived in that world, the older generation in particular, we've lived in a world where you've been able to engage people
Right.
and have kind of an agreement, like, you know enough about it that we can have an intelligent
Because
conversation,
there's
but that's
certain
not the world.
presumptions.
Yes.
You have a conversation, there are certain presumptions that whether they go to church or don't go to church, we don't, there's presumptions that they know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And this
That's
guy had a presumption that you knew about pickleball and knew about the paddles and so on and so forth, and you walked
I think he
away.
profiled me. I think you're right. I think he profiled me. He's like, "Yeah, this dude is the age group that
Right.
would be
Right.
playing
You
pickleball."
should like pickleball.
He's
I saw a
50,
deal the other day,
51.
Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf versus it's a pickleball thing that they're doing. Like these former tennis superstars are having this doubles pickleball
It's
match.
amazing, man.
Right. So anyway, but it's funny because as you talked about that, it reminded me of one of the examples that Malcolm Gladwell in his book The Tipping Point gave.
Yeah.
It was an example of how things go viral, and and it relates to sort of this idea of people maybe not thinking that that's for them. Like,
Mhm.
in other words, so a non-Christian culture, a particularly secular culture, and again, see, this is the conversation that we're not even delving into. I mean, we could spend multiple podcast episodes talking about how did Gen Zs and so on and so forth, X, and how did we go from millennial to X to Z and get to a point where 90% of them say we have no affiliation with the church and no and not call myself a Christian, and I'm not intending to. And yet we find that a lot of missiologists say that actually the most open group for the missional message in the last 100 years is the Gen Z. So it is
Yeah.
not to say that because of their current condition is often built around the fact that they have been through a a process of secularization. And that secularization has come from many angles. It's been the education system, it's come at them from every different angle, and they've arrived at a place of being predominantly secular a lot of different ways. And so we're not talking about that at all.
Right.
We're just simply saying that they might look at the millennial age, which, by the way, millennials are like they're bumping 40, right? They're 40
Right.
now,
Right. Right.
you know, and so, they may so you might have somebody who's 16 look at a 40-year-old and say, man, you're so out of touch. It's funny, you think about millennials, they used to be the kids,
Mhm.
and now we're like, the Gen Zs might look at the millennials who are probably the first predominantly post-Christian segment
Sure.
generation.
Sure.
And then so in Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, he gave an example of how things go viral and how that they can sort of spread like wildfire when they reach a critical tipping point. He gave the example of a fax machine. He said in 1984, the electronics company Sharp came out with an affordable home model fax machine
Mm.
that sold 80,000 units in that year. But strangely, even though people were familiar with fax machines because they knew that businesses had fax machines, or
Yeah.
they could go to some place, and there was a post office or something that they could go and they could send a fax, right?
Sure.
But sales didn't really take off, and the reason why that Sharp said they did a market analysis, and they realized this is what Gladwell says, that people were able to dismiss their need to personally own a fax machine.
My
They were
goodness.
able to easily dismiss their need to own a fax machine. But by 1987, right? So this is 3 years.
Okay.
The tide had begun to shift.
Right.
And the number of people who now had fax machines in their home for various reasons. And there'd be a lot of reasons why somebody, and I don't want to again dig into that. Let's just keep it at the surface level.
Sure.
But like home business owners or insurance salesmen or
Yeah.
people that
Sure.
are small business owners or whatever that are like, hey, I could do business from home if I had a fax machine in my house. So there were a growing number of people that began to realize, well, this might be beneficial for me, right? So in 1987, the tide had begun to shift, and the number of people who had fax machines in their homes had reached a level that it had overwhelmed those easy to dismiss arguments for people that were on the fence. So when the dam finally broke, the sales of home fax machines jumped from 80,000 in the first year of 1984 to 5 million
Holy cow.
by 1990.
Wow. That's
Ultimately,
crazy.
so here's the deal. Ultimately, there was enough people. Here's the point. There were enough people that were telling their own personal fax machine stories that others began to, if they were on the fence, began to take the dive and say, well, maybe so. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that's an example of saying when you're talking to people that may not see the relevance. I think this is the big point. If you're talking to a predominantly,
Yeah.
because if
Yeah.
you're talking to a post-Christian culture, you could say to them, come on, man, you need a fax machine.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just buy the fax. You need the fax. But if you're talking to a secular culture,
Yeah.
the people that are, it's easy for them to dismiss. They're like, I don't need it. I don't want it. Good for you.
Yeah. What value
Send
does
your
it
faxes. I don't
what value
care.
does it provide for me? It doesn't do anything for me, right?
So what Sharp found out was that eventually there were enough people who found it personally desirable, personally beneficial to own a fax machine that all of a sudden it tipped the scales and it reached, as Gladwell talks in the book Tipping Point, it reached a tipping point where people who were on the fence that were easily dismissing it and being like, nah, not for me, that's not for me, or whatever, began to take a second look and go, well, maybe I ought to take a second look at that. And I believe this is the thing. I believe that in a Christian and post-Christian culture, the conversations that we have with people
Okay.
are those presumptuous conversations where we're just presuming that they know what a pickleball paddle is, that they know. And so we're just having those conversations. But I believe that this proves that our personal stories
Mm-hmm.
need to become something that predominantly is the thing that starts leading these cultures toward Jesus.
Man, that's such a great analogy, bro. Because think about it. For somebody, okay, going back into that age of technology, John Hummel made a comment about like not knowing that anybody had even had fax machines in their homes, right?
Uh-huh.
Like in our hour or the kind of technological culture we're in right now, that kind of seems like really like people wanted fax machines in their homes. It's kind of weird.
Right.
But man, back then you had to think about like, dude, that was bananas. That was crazy to be able to get a fax in your home and
Right.
whatever. And so, but to a lot of people, what you said at the beginning, right? Okay, yes, businesses, post office, sure. Like I totally get that. That makes a lot of sense. But what in the world would I need it in my home for? So what's going to shift that? Is it going to be a promotion where they start telling like here are the technological benefits of having a fax machine. Here's all the details. Here's all the information. This is all the things it can do. Most people are still going to be like, so what? Like that's still not going to impact
Right.
me or change me.
Yeah, there's a good point.
But
Yeah.
when you start talking to your neighbor and they're like, dude, I got this fax machine and we were able to, fax some information into work and I was able to do some stuff at home instead of having to go in the office and whatever. And they're like, oh, dude, I never thought about that. And so now
Yeah.
I need to get one. Right. And I think the reason I bring that up is particularly for us a little bit older, what we try to do is we think what they need is they just need more information. If we can just give them more information, then
Hmm.
they're gonna see the need for the fax machine.
Hmm. Which, by the way, those are mavens in the tipping point book.
Right.
Like he says it does take the people that are the mavens. They're the people that are out there on the front edge, that they're, the people that are going to go and they're going to know all of the stuff about, they know all the data, all the statistics, all the, here's, it can do this, it can do that, it can do da 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 da. But mavens alone don't
Yeah.
create a tipping point. That's interesting.
100%, right?
Yeah.
Just more information is gonna cause people to see their need for it, but that's really not again, you need that information. We're not saying just dismiss it, but what turns the tide? When I see somebody who's using it, that's like, "You know what? For me, a great example is the iPad,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
remember thinking when, when iPads started really getting big, I remember thinking, who why w what use would I have for an iPad? Like, why would I need that? That doesn't make any sense to me. I've got
Yes.
my computer, I've got my laptop. I don't need a s basically the same thing that I can just carry around with me and whatever. And but seeing people, right? So seeing somebody who had an iPad and they're like, "Bro, for a pastor,
Yeah.
man, you can do your sermons, you can make
Right.
changes and updates, you can read books on it, you can do whatever." And now all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh, now I see a practical application for this that I knew the information, but I didn't see the practical application," which goes back to your deal about Francis Schaeffer about 60 minutes, 55 minutes to ask questions so you can get gospel to them in the last 5 minutes, goes back to identifying for people who are non-Christian culture, right? How do we take it and get them to see we know that Jesus is the answer to every question,
Mhm.
whatever the question is. But what we try to do is we try to information them, and what we really need to do is to find out, like, what is their area of need? Okay, for me, the iPad as the thing that immediately appealed to me as somebody who preached a lot of sermons
Yeah.
was, "Dude, I can use this for my sermons, and I don't have to carry my big" remember we used to carry
I
the
know. I
like, the
know.
notebook binder things,
Right.
and you put them in little plastic sheets, and you'd flip the paper over, and if you make changes, you gotta print it out again or whatever, and I was
Right.
like, "Dude, to not have to do that and have everything updated, absolutely, I can use
Absolutely.
that." Somebody made it gospel to me. They made it so that I could see the application for me in this culture. That's what we're gonna have to get better at, which is what you're talking about, Ken, which is
Right.
closing the credibility gap, right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's yeah, it's funny, just to highlight real quickly those, there is the need of the mavens. I mean, he talks about there is the need of that. There's the need of the connectors, people
Mhm.
that are, they're the people that are, they can all, for some reason, they can always get a crowd together. They can always get a group of people to, hey, let's do this. They're
Yeah.
connectors. And then there's the other people that are the persuaders or the salesmen, the people that are sort of charismatic about it, whatever. And so Gladwell kind of talks about those three things when they come together, sort of create the tipping point. And I think, and that what you're talking about really is interesting, because I think the second really kind of key thing here is, particularly as it relates to the mission, is this idea that your product has to be good enough. It has to be memorable enough. It has to be life changing enough to make people take action. It can't just be novel.
Mm.
Um, now, obviously, there can be some novelness to it. Like, for example, if you have, um, I think he was talking about hush puppy shoes, or
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
what was the what's
Good
what's
example.
the what's the shoes? Golly, and they're not Keds. The shoes that, I don't know, 10 or so years ago became so popular, everybody had to have, and I'm like, they're just a pair of canvas shoes.
Mhm.
What were
Mhm.
those called?
Probably Keds, right?
No, it
You
was
don't think they were the
they were
Keds?
no, there was some kind of a deal where they sold them.
Toms?
Toms, Toms.
Yeah, they
You
gave them
know,
away, like,
gave
they
them, yep. Yeah,
to
and
homeless or whatever.
right, and there was a novelness to that and whatever, but it was it's but it was but here's the point, the product has to be either good enough, memorable enough, or life-changing enough to make
Sure.
people take action. That's what Gladwell says, and he calls that the stickiness factor. If it's not gonna change somebody's life, if it's not gonna be super memorable, if it's not good enough, in other words, it's got to be better than something you're already using. It has to be memorable enough that you can't just easily forget or dismiss it. And it's got to be life change. Or let's do it like this. Okay. It's got to be good enough that you're willing to switch from the product that you currently like or want. It's got to be memorable enough that you can't just easily just forget about it. And it's got to be life changing enough that you can't just dismiss it.
Yeah.
That's what causes people to take action. And that's Gladwell calls that the stickiness factor. And so when we talk about the credibility gap, the reality is that there's not enough preponderance of information that you can give about Jesus and the gospel
Yeah.
that causes a secular culture to believe that it's good enough, memorable enough, or life-changing enough to make somebody take some action.
The attractional church model is totally inadequate for that.
Right. And that's the thing when we continue to say, you try to make it good enough, memorable enough, life-changing enough. And so what happens is if people aren't looking for Jesus, the more that the culture, see, here's the trap. This is the
Yeah.
trap. And I believe the devil's more cunning than any creature. And he still continues to be a chaos creature that's cunning. And what does he do? I think the enemy says, I'm going to set up a system that the more secular the culture becomes,
Yeah.
the more reliant on carnal devices the church is going to have to be.
Shoo-wee.
The more secular the church
Shoo-wee.
becomes, the more and more the thing that draws and attracts them is going to have to be less about Jesus and more about what appeals to their flesh.
Goodness. Goodness gracious.
So what that means is that it's going to have to become less and less Jesus and less kingdom and less gospel and more social issues, cultural things. This is going to be good. This you need this. You're going to have a better family. You'll have a better family life. You'll have better. Your children will mind better. You'll have. It becomes less and less about the cross and more about their current life structure. And so I think the real credibility gap is not just that you have a group of people who are telling the same story, but that you have a group of people telling the same story of how Jesus changed their lives and transformed them. The result of all of these things, yes, I have a better life. Yes, I have a better marriage. Yes, I'm happier. Yes, I'm all of those things. But as a result of fundamental transformation, not
Yeah.
that's the product, that's the fruit. That's not the root.
Absolutely. This is why what you say is so good, Ken, that most things are neutral as far as so the issue is like so on the attractional model side, you've got all these things that we think are going to draw people, right? We got to make it appeal to people, which are carnal means to do the spiritual mission.
Right.
It's inadequate. There's
It
no
is.
way that it can do that. So what happens a lot of times is you've got that end where you've got people doing all of the things thinking this is what's going to get the mission done. This is what's going to accomplish it. And there's no way that it can do it. It ends up in it just carnality is gonna produce carnality, right?
Because God set in motion in the beginning of time that everything reproduces after its kind.
Absolutely.
If
And
you sow to the flesh, you will of the flesh reap
yeah,
corruption.
yeah. So then you can have a reflex on the other side. It's like, what we need to do is we need to banish all of that because that's what they're doing. That's we don't want any of that. So we're gonna banish all that. When in reality, Ken, what you say is so critical is like, what is the engine that's driving it? Right?
Right.
What's the operating system? I remember
That's it.
when you started going down that road and we started talking this stuff through and that's something that you said that really I think clicked with me and helped me to grasp when we were in these early stages of trying to figure stuff out
Right.
is what is the operating system? Because whatever the operating system is, it determines what the outcomes are, what it's going to be produced by that. So when we do things like a cafe in our church, or we have, lights and video and whatever. Here's the deal. None of that is the operating system by which we do the mission.
Right.
It just happens to be a part of the world that we live in that we have accessible and available, just like back in the day, people switched from songbooks to transparencies,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we can put songs up, have somebody remember the person that's the transparency
So
person? They had
they
this like
had a chair by the machine,
had a
bro.
chair,
And they had
bro.
had like one of those filing things at the deal, and all of a sudden somebody pull out a new song and they're like, oh, and they're like
Yeah, yeah.
looking through you.
And so the point is, what's the operating system? That's what we're driving at here is what is the
Yeah.
operating system that drives the mission, drives the church, that drives the kingdom. And the operating system is disciples that make disciples that make disciples. People that are first a disciple of Jesus, that allow that transformation, and then they take that transformation and share it with other people. That's the operating system of the true of a church that has,
Missional.
yeah, the kingdom
Yeah.
values,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That's how we function, we operate. And so that's why I say the attractional model church that is building everything that they do on the mission, that's their operating system to do the mission. And it's only going to produce, like you said, begat. It's going to only produce the carnality. It's only going to produce what it can produce. That's why we've got to get people back
Yeah.
to living on mission, because the only way you're going to get somebody to get a fax machine
Yeah.
is to show them how it changed your life.
That's it. And that is the stickiness of the message of the transformed community.
Yeah.
What you're talking about right there is the stickiness of the transformed community. The transformed community is because here's the thing, Chris. In the early church, particularly in the regions beyond the predominant Jewish background, in
Yeah.
areas beyond where Jesus's earthly ministry was situated, in places where they'd not so much heard that there be any Holy Ghost, or they had not heard about Jesus.
Sure.
What had to happen was that one or two people could tell the story of Jesus changing their life. But when all of a sudden it becomes sort of this unified message that's coming out of a transformed community, it's not just one or two people telling a friend, it's all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're hearing it coming from all kinds of different directions.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element of the stickiness factor right there.
Man, absolutely 100%. Do you wanna mention just real quick? I know we're running up on time, but
Yeah.
just uh, Tony Richard mentioned
Yeah.
about
Ethos.
logos and ethos. Do you wanna
Yeah.
do you wanna just kinda mention a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah. Real
I think
fast.
that's
Okay.
important.
Yeah. All right. So, potentially we can, I don't know if you can put this on the, maybe at least the Facebook feed or something for people to look
Mhm.
at, but, um,
Sure can.
so, when we think about building a new conversation with the culture that we've talked about in this podcast, this is something we can leave with you today to really think about and maybe make this graphic available. It's a graphic that we came up with that really sort of speaks to this kind of thing. But that is, so in the we're kind of looking at now. What we did was we created sort of, we said 20th century versus 21st century. And if you look at it, though, you'll see that in the 20th century, you're dealing with a mostly Christian, either Christian or a strong Christian memory in the post-Christian culture. In the 21st century, you're dealing with people that have very little Christian memory of a post-Christian culture, or mostly secular. Okay. In the 20th century, the conversation, the appeal. So we're talking about the what does the conversation look like with people? In the 20th century, the appeal that we made was more of a logos appeal. It was logical, biblical arguments.
Sure.
The emphasis, this is a predominantly an informational conversation, right? We're having an informational conversation with mostly either Christian or at least Christian memory, post-Christian culture. And so we're having an informational conversation. Our appeal is logical biblical arguments. And the emphasis is, what are we trying to do? What is the thing we're trying to accomplish? And that is to prove something. Why you should do something, why you should believe something, why you should take a particular action. And so we had statements and arguments, and we built those so that we could, at the end of that argument, we could prove, that was our emphasis,
Yeah.
through the information that we were disseminating, why someone should do something or take some action. And so the direction of that conversation was an at conversation. You've heard us often say, we want to have a conversation with you, not at you. The conversation of the 20th century in a mostly Christian or post-Christian culture was an informational, biblical arguments, proving statements and arguments that prove something, and it was a conversation at. In the 21st century, this new culture that we're talking about, which is mostly secular, is going to have to be more of an ethos appeal. It's going to have to be more of personal transformation stories. It's going to have to be more, not just simply the logical argument, but the argument or the emphasis that comes out of the result. This is who we are because of. It doesn't leave the logos behind. It
Sure.
just simply reveals the logos through the result of it. The emphasis of the conversation is not a proving emphasis, it's a discovering. What do you think God's doing with that? How do you think God, why do you think God is allowing that? What do you think God's trying to show you? So they're questions that help people in their discovery, and it's a conversation with people, spiritual conversations with them, not at them.
So good, man. It's so good. Trying to add I'm trying to add this to the deal so people can see it.
Yeah.
Um, it's not working real good right now,
Okay.
so I will do that later on. I'll make sure that it gets added,
Sure.
because I do think it's so relevant. One of the things in particular that I'll just highlight real quick, Ken, is the conversation with. I think
Mhm.
particularly in this generation, it is so vital and it's so critical that you have discussions and conversations with. You've quoted statistics before about, people there's a particular abhorrence
Yeah.
against when people feel like you're trying to convert them to your
Yeah.
way of thinking,
That's a good
because
point.
we live in such a, in the words of the great Ken Dillingham, "You do you, boo." He literally said that at a, I think, Minnesota conference.
I did that. I
"You
did say
do
that.
you do you, boo." Like that kinda deal, like, whatever, but don't impose your beliefs on me,
Mhm.
right? And now, even in our generation, I mentioned this, this weekend to a group. Now it's no longer, you do you, let me do me. Now it's, if you try to impose certain beliefs or whatever on me,
Yeah.
that's violence.
Yeah. Who do you think you are? And you need to be shut up and shut down, right?
You got to be shut up and shut down quick. And so there's a particular abhorrence to that kind of feeling. So this conversation with, if somebody feels like the conversation is at them, and this is where, again, the idea of what true biblical spiritual tension looks like and what it is,
Well,
bro, it happens in relationship. You're able to have, this is where people get confused, think like, well, we can't put people in spiritual tension. We can't, say things that might be offensive to people, but the gospel confronts places.
right. Right. It sure
No, you
does.
can. You absolutely can have those conversations. You need to have those conversations, but you need to have it, number 1, out of the byproduct of relationship,
Come on.
so that people know that you love them, that you care about them, that when you're talking about these things, they may have disagreements, but you're doing it out of love and out of relationship with them, and you're having a conversation with, instead of saying to them, like, "Your lifestyle is wrong."
There you go.
Right? Have the conversation. How does your lifestyle contribute to the pain that you're feeling right now? Yeah,
Man.
you know what I'm saying? Like, you're having God conversations. So it's conversations with, instead of like preaching at them. Bro, I'm telling you, particularly this generation is absolutely all about that. we run the risk of if all we do is we run the risk of people just flipping it off. They can flip it to another channel and hear another voice and don't have to
Yeah.
worry about any of it.
Well, they and that's the thing. They turn it off. You know, it's going back to, you know, what we originally said was it gives people the ability to simply say, you know, like, yeah, you know, that's another reason why I'm not that. Another reason why I'll
Yeah.
never be a Christian. And it's not that they're, and this is the thing that bugs me, is that it's not that they're not open. It's not that they're not spiritually hungry or interested. It's simply that the mechanisms that have created the secularization are, it's almost like this is kind of a weird way to say it, but Joseph, when he brought his family to Egypt, he said to his family, he said, "Look, there's a great area, and it's called Goshen, and it's in the plain, it's fertile, it's in the Nile Delta, it's close to where we've come from, it's close to the promised land. And if you tell Pharaoh that you're shepherds,
Yeah.
he'll let you stay in Goshen, because shepherds are abhorrent to Egyptians."
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
But here's the deal. Like, in other words, but because of the fact, this is what's so crazy. I've always read that and I'm like, this is so weird. Joseph is telling them, tell Pharaoh that you're shepherds because Egyptians despise shepherds. Like,
Makes no
and
sense, right?
no, we think, because we think we should say something. No, let's downplay that, because we want to be looked on favorably here.
Sure. Sure.
Joseph says, I've already taken care of that.
Mm.
I've already established the favorability. I've got a relationship with Pharaoh. I saved the country. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You don't have to soft shoe and soft step what you are,
So good, man.
because
So
I've
good.
already made entrance and I've already bridged the credibility gap. Don't worry about it.
I love that. I love that. That's so good.
It's the only thing that makes sense, right?
Absolutely, man. It makes so much sense. It's so good. I wanna mention real quick what, Jeffrey Glick mentioned, and I think this is when I read this, I'm like, I wanna tie it to my statement earlier. He said, "So when we're" so the whole deal about the first century church anticipating Messiah more than looking for a person who saves, Gentiles were looking for the life transformation Messiah could bring. Their openness and awareness for their personal need for transformation led them to Jesus. Now here's the line. So when we meet unbelievers, we are stirring up that awareness in them that they truly need what Jesus will give. And when I read that, bro, it just totally clicked with me. I'd mentioned about pickleball.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about pickleball in forever.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I started thinking, my wife and I did get pickleball paddles.
Yeah.
And, we ought to go play pickleball. We ought to
I
go, it'd be
right.
something to go do. Like,
Right.
meet some people and,
Right.
whatever. And so that one conversation,
Mm.
and what's interesting, it was a question, "Do you play pickleball?" And then started asking me questions about my, like, equipment and all this kind of stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
And it created kind of a thought in me of like, man, maybe I should go do that. So I just say that to
That's
say
good.
it can feel, Ken, it can feel in this culture,
Yeah.
particularly for those of us that are Gen X and above,
Yeah. Yeah.
it can feel particularly hopeless
Bro.
because we live, man, it's such a secular culture and people don't want Jesus. I mean, things that are happening in our world today that we thought we would never see in a lifetime. And they're just the norm. They're just the constant norm, right?
Mm.
It can feel extremely hopeless. But what we want to do is, what we want to say is, we have the greatest potential because with this, there is an awakening that's happening that the greatest army, the greatest weapon we have are mobilized people
Yeah.
that are asking those questions and causing people who have not thought about Jesus, their need for Jesus, the need for God, the need for they haven't thought about that in longer than I thought about pickleball, right? But you ask the question or you show your life in front of them, and now all of a sudden, as Jeffrey Glick said, now all of a sudden there's an awareness that's birthed in them, and they
Mhm.
start thinking about that, and bro, that becomes the womb where God can start working in their spirit. God can start moving in them, and when they start opening themselves up to the possibility, again, relationship, we're connection, we're having conversations with them, now all of a sudden we can start moving them towards, and truthfully, it can really be an unbelievable blessing because there are people that are crazy open to whatever because the world is so empty.
Yeah. And well, and this, and Chris, what this goes right along with what, Sharp, the company
Yeah.
who sold, what was it, 84,000, or that was 1984. How many did they sell? What was the number? Uh,
80,000?
yeah, something like that.
It was
We want to make,
80,000 and 5,000,000.
yeah, like, you know, just, yeah, like in 84, they sell 80,000.
Mhm.
There were probably, let's just be honest, people are people. There were probably people in their organization that said, golly, we put all this time, effort, and energy, and people just don't want fax machines.
Yeah.
And there were probably people that took that position. Like there might have been people in the C-suite, the C-level leaders in Sharp. There might have been some people who said, boy, I hope we didn't waste all this time, effort, and energy and R&D on something that people just don't want.
Sure.
But somebody did some market research. Somebody did some market analysis. There were some salesmen. There were some people that were so invested in it that said, no, we're not going to give up that easily. It's not, this is a great product. It's just that we haven't figured out how to present it in such a way. There's something has to happen. And I think that the people who continue to say, no, here's the deal. This is the way you present the gospel, or this is what we do, or was good enough for me, was good enough for my grandpa, and was good enough in the revival I was saved in, bless God.
Yeah.
That what happens is they will be the people that will eventually say, well, people just don't want Jesus.
Sure.
And they don't, and that's why Jesus said the children of darkness are wiser than the children of light. Why? Because there were people at Sharp that started doing a market analysis that said, we need to stop emphasizing the information about the Sharp, about all the details of why all it can do all of these things. Okay, people know that. We need to start emphasizing the stories of people who said, we were, so watch this. Here's what advertising does. Advertising comes along and says, um, I bought a fax machine because I'm an insurance salesman. And one night we had a particularly bad asthma attack, and our son was in very bad shape. And it was worse than any asthma attack he had had. And I called the doctor, and the doctor said, man, I wish you had a fax machine. I'd send a prescription over. We do have a fax machine. And the doctor sent the fax machine, and we found a pharmacy that was still open when we're able to take that prescription. And our son's life might have been saved
Mhm.
because we had a fax machine.
Mhm.
And Sharp started saying, that's what people know what a fax machine could do. They just don't see it as relevant for them. But we start telling these stories. And I'm telling you, Chris, that's the thing, because it's easy for people to dismiss. It's easy for them to dismiss. You could tell them all of the things, but what's going to cause them to start taking a second thought? It's not more information. It's something that personally connects with them. It's some way that it begins to stir a thought in their heart that goes, well, maybe, like you just explained.
Absolutely, man, and I think a more modern example, that's from Tipping Point. More modern examples, you could use the iPhone or the Apple Watch. There was such pushback on those things, like, why who wants to carry a phone with them all the time? Like, why? Why would and then all of a sudden, there became this awareness of how it can be used, and, man, you could give your 16-year-old kid that just got his driver's license a cell phone
Yeah,
that if he ever gets in trouble or whatever, he can call 911 and, "Oh, man, we've gotta do that. We've gotta
yeah,
get that." And now all of a sudden you start seeing all the people that have these things and the things that they're capable of doing,
yeah.
right? Like, we've seen that so many times with the Apple Watch. There's nobody's gonna buy an Apple Watch.
I
There
don't want
nobody wa
another dumb something on my wrist that
Yeah, yeah, but raising that awareness, and again, Jeffrey Glick commented that these awareness during conversations with faith-curious unbelievers is how the church was planted in our post-Christian mission field out in Northern California, and that's so true, bro, and I
and
think
I would
that's
even suggest to him it's probably
beyond.
more than a post-Christian
Yeah,
because post-Christian, we define post-Christian as people who still had a Christian memory,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
Christian is people who are currently in a Christian culture. Post-Christian are those who have a Christian memory. I would say that he probably's planted his church in a non-Christian secular culture predominantly.
yeah. So creating those I love that, the awareness stirring conversations, bro. We've got to become masters of having awareness during conversations and not dismiss people just because they're in that non-Christian
That's
group.
exactly right.
And that's what we've done. We've dismissed the non-Christians like, well, we've got to go after people that have some Christian memory or whatever. They're the ones. Now, how do we create conversations that or how do we have conversations that stir up an awareness for the need for Jesus in their lives? That's the key.
We had a conversation the other day. This is the last thing I'll mention. I think
Yeah.
this is someone was telling me they had a really good spiritual conversation. One of our disciples, and they said they asked the person. They said um, the person shared, you know, a situation, and the disciple maker said, "Man, that's got to be tough. What are you doing to handle that?" And the person said, "Uh." Probably, probably not the best thing. What do you mean? I've been drinking and I've been drinking a whole lot more and just kind of isolating myself, whatever. And the person just simply said, is that, is that helping the situation at all? How's that working for you?
It's one of
And
my
I said,
favorite questions. How's that
and
working for you?
he said, it's not. And he's like, it's not, but I'm so burnt out and so frustrated that I really don't have the strength and energy to do it. And this disciple maker makes this statement that I think is just game changer, bro.
Mhm.
The disciple maker said, I can understand that. I can understand being so hurt, so broken, so at the end of yourself, having no answers, that you just simply don't know what else to do except, you know, either, people go on shopping therapy and, max out their credit card. Some people eat gallons of ice cream. Some people turn to the bottle. I get that. That's a form of checking out.
Mhm.
But he said, but and he said, I've been there and feeling like I don't even have the energy anymore to even fight. And he said, and this is what has become so beautiful to me about the invitation that was offered to me by Jesus. And that is, he said, come to me who are weary and overloaded.
Mhm.
And he said, and I will give you rest. And he said, and the amazing thing is, Jesus actually asks me to bring my burnt outness to him so that he can give me the strength and rest and peace that I need.
So good.
And I found it to be true over and over. And the guy says, you know, sounds like what I need.
Let's go. Let's
Isn't that
go.
crazy?
It's
The guy's like,
amazing.
sounds like what I need. And it wasn't
It's
like
beautiful.
he didn't, he didn't like hang it out and dangle it and do like this, like I got to learn how to do this bait and switch. He literally had this beautiful conversation that basically said, good news, bro. Good news. You are at the end of yourself, and all you can think to do is to tip the bottle.
Yeah.
But Jesus wants to tip the scales in your favor with his power and resources. Come on.
So good, man. That's amazing. And I think that's why we do what we do, Ken, is because we want to help churches create a culture where you're able to have those spiritual those awareness stirring conversations. That's going to be a term that I'm going to start utilizing a lot more. Those awareness stirring conversations. How do we become better at having that? Because that's the key in the world that we live in today.
Come on.
That's the key.
That's it.
So good. So good. Man, great comments today. Appreciate everybody being a part, jumping on, and engaging with us today. So if you have any questions, if we would love to connect, Ken. We'd love to connect with pastors. You can check us out. We got some information that'll be available to you here in just a minute. Check us out. Go to the social media sites, dillingham.org, and we would certainly love to connect with you. Appreciate everybody being a part. We look forward to coming back to you next Tuesday around 10 o'clock. Until then, go live mobilized. God bless.